Wonderful. Thanks so much, Patricia. That was fascinating. I was captivated there. I really need you to try and do a show on BBC or something. I can imagine the visuals or the mock-ups of Neanderthal life already. I'd be 100% watch that. That was so good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would just say that I would really recommend that book because it has those like narratives in it. So there's a lot of science, but there's a lot of like just imagining how Neanderthals would live in a very kind of creative narrative way. So if you're not into like just like scientific data being thrown at you, like
Yeah,
this book is really great.
that was so good. Thanks so much, Patricia. We'll move on to our final talk of the day, Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. So Rebecca Lowe is a freelance writer, facilitator, and events coordinator based here in Edinburgh, or where I am in Edinburgh. Having previously worked in creative learning and education, she's currently writing, thinking, and reading lots about working culture, the changing nature of career, and how the places and spaces where we work, rest and play are evolving. Rebecca, as some of you may know, is also a member of the Creative Mornings Edinburgh team, who host inspiring monthly speaker events around the city. I love Creative Mornings. We all struggle with productivity guilt, or at least I do. So I'm delighted to say that Rebecca is about to give us the antidote. Is that right? By sharing her five, maybe, by sharing her five things from I Don't Do the Thing Today by Madeline Dorr.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, I don't know if I've got a solution, but I've certainly got some ideas from this book about it. So I Didn't Do the Thing Today is a book about letting go of productivity guilt. It's about dismantling the idea that our self-worth is defined by the work that we do, and it's about finding joy in the kind of stumbles of our everyday. So if we go on to the next slide, please, Andy. It is a culmination of a decade of work nearly a decade of work by the writer Madeline Dorr. So kind of back in 2013-14, Madeline found herself in a bit of a creative and professional rut, but she was convinced that if only she could find, the right productivity hack, the perfect morning routine, some sort of secret sauce, that would be the key to her own success and ultimately her own happiness. She saw that other people seemed to be getting it right, so what was it that she was missing? So she began speaking to people that she knew and that she admired about their own creative processes. And eventually these conversations became the Extraordinary Routines Project, which started as a blog and eventually became an accompanying podcast as well. And it kind of paints a fascinating picture about personal passion, about procrastination, and kind of ultimately starts to demystify the whole creative process and what we think about productivity around that. And big spoiler alert, she found that there isn't actually one secret way to like hack your own productivity or optimize every area of your life and your work. But what she found instead was that when it comes to happiness, self-worth, and settling on your own kind of version of success, none of that stuff actually matters. So I kind of came across this book quite recently. I quit my full-time job at the start of last year to go fully freelance. And with that, kind of found myself questioning my own worth, my capabilities, all those kind of, oh my God, what have I just done thoughts. Now that I wasn't in an organization and surrounded by a sense of structure and expectation. So call it divine intervention, call it fate, or more likely my Instagram algorithm, Madeline's work and this book kind of started popping up everywhere. So I thought, do you know what? I need something to read, so let's go for it. And it turned out to be a real ideal, reassuring hand on my shoulder that I needed at the time. So although a lot of the stuff she kind of collates for this book aren't necessarily new or even that groundbreaking, I found that a lot of it really kind of spoke to me. So I'm going to share 5 things from it with you today. So the first one is that we should think of our days as fecund and not finished. So there's a thread that runs through this book that the idea of focusing on productivity as an end goal in itself actually narrows our lives. And that actually at first might feel a little bit counterintuitive. Productivity, as we are told, is about filling our time, it's about giving ourselves purpose, it's about things to do, having things to show for the time that we spend on this earth. But actually, Madeline says that filling our days with things to be ticked off, actually, all that does is it leaves us with no space for spontaneity, for growth, mistakes, learning, all the kind of good stuff about life. So she says that we need to get a new perspective. So something that's fecund is capable of producing new growth. And it's also just a lovely earthy word. Madeline suggests that it could be better to think of our days as fecund and continuous and cyclical, and not kind of just like a series of boxes to be filled, finished, onto the next one, and a kind of never-ending line. Obviously, using nature in this way to kind of parallel our existence and experience as humans isn't new, but I really like this way of thinking about it. It places the same amount of importance on moments of rest and quiet and thinking and reflection as it does on the times when we need connection, motivation and action. And the way she talks about it is that if we plant seeds in the window box, we don't give up on them and chuck out the soil just because we don't have a tub full of blooms after one day. So perhaps we should treat ourselves with the same patience and that willingness to nurture the soil that we're in and our things around us, even and especially when we're not necessarily outwardly flourishing. Okay, and I can have the next slide, please, Andy. Thank you. So the second thing that I took from this book was to treat every day as an experiment. And obviously, like I say, this isn't a new idea, but it's still a really interesting one for me. So if the pursuit of productivity narrows our lives, it's creativity is the thing that expands our lives. And a big part of this book is about creativity as an antidote to any feelings of guilt, shame, and failure that we associate with constantly being productive or feeling like we have to be productive. And that's not just creativity in its traditional form, though I'm a huge advocate of including even just the smallest amount of unmonetized making, writing, reading, painting, music, whatever it is in your daily life, especially if your kind of main job is traditionally creative, because these are the things that really nourish and inspire us. But obviously not just creativity in that sense, but also about taking on a more creative perspective and thinking about our days differently. So productivity, if that's a fixed outcome, you either do the thing or you don't do the thing. And usually when we don't do the thing, it's a marker of failure. We didn't do, so we did nothing, and nothing isn't worth anything. But that's what we're told. Whereas creativity is all about experimentation, it's about space, it's about trial and error, it's about learning. And of course, the differing degrees of privilege that we all experience dictate the things that we have to do and the certain responsibilities that we have to meet each day, whether that's working in a 9-to-5, caring for children or for elderly parents, all these different things. And sometimes it feels that life happens. Life is the thing that happens in those kind of pockets of time around those responsibilities. And we feel that those pockets of time, there's a real pressure to optimize them. We have to make them productive as well. That has to be when we, check our emails before work. That's when we have to put on a wash. That's when we have to, call the car mechanic. But this book kind of encourages to actually sometimes, why not use that time to experiment instead? And by experiment, that could be, doing something kind of traditionally creative, might be, kind of doing a bit of writing, a bit of journaling, whatever it is. It might be just for going a walk around the block. Or it might be, and I don't know why this one always feels the most radical, it might just be about, staying in bed an extra 20 minutes in the morning. If you've got that time that you usually spend kind of opening up your laptop before you even start work, do you need to be there? So doing something different with that time, it might feel worse, it might not make you feel any different at all, and actually all that is fine as well. But in the book, Madeline likes to bet that it'll make you feel better when you choose experimentation first and not productivity, and not worry about the outcome. Because the creative approach to our days like this is really key to developing our intuition and understanding around what works for us, not what we're told is meant to work for us. Okay, and that takes us on to our point 3. Thank you, Andy. So point 3 is about having less routine and more rhythm. We obviously live in a world that's obsessed by routines. We are told that having a routine is a solution to all our ills. I did a bit of a very quick research on TikTok before coming on to do this morning, and the hashtag morning routine has been viewed 6.6 billion times on TikTok, which blows my mind. And there are millions and millions of video hours and words online dedicated to evangelizing the benefits of a routine. So like, you want to be a millionaire, you better have a routine. You want to have more time in your day, well, you better have a routine. You want to feel happier, you better have a routine. And it's not to discount that for some people, routine is useful and can even be genuinely life-changing and life-saving. But also I feel suspicious, and so does Madeline in the book, that these kind of so-called perfect routines, they all look very similar. They're all kind of very glossy. They all involve getting up at a ridiculous hour in the morning, kind of like that picture on the slide, waking up with the sunrise. They usually involve some sort of really intense form of exercise in the morning, eating a very restrictive kind of diet, and just doing loads and loads and loads of stuff before our days even start. And like, for a lot of people, that is just not practical. And we know already that there's no one size fits all hack to kind of optimizing our life and success. And these copy and paste routines are actually kind of just setting us up to fail, because life is messy and there are things that happen every single day that are completely out of our control. Things don't go to plan, and sometimes that can be a small thing, sometimes it can be something much bigger or more inconvenient. But just because things change and things get disrupted, that doesn't mean that we've failed. Madeline writes in the book that these disruptions are actually about bringing new possibilities. And while some people might find reassurance in kind of tightly regulated timings and having kind of every hour of the day allocated to something, I think that we will hopefully find a little bit more joy in being a little bit more looser and kind of listening to ourselves and actually, what do we want? So instead of judging ourselves when days take a bit of an unexpected turn, we should lean into the change of rhythm rather than kind of fight it. And different periods of our lives follow different rhythms. You know, things that worked for you 5 years ago, or even things that worked for you 5 days ago, aren't necessarily going to work today, and that's fine. This book really kind of encourages you not to force it and feel bad when things kind of don't go as planned, especially when you're taking that kind of plan from someone else's template. Our worth is not determined by the time that we get up in the morning or how many hours we sit at a laptop. So let's not kind of pigeonhole ourselves into someone else's routine, and yeah, listen to our own rhythms a bit more. Okay, and thing number 4 is one that really struck home for me, is that curiosity is the cure for comparison. And comparison was a big driver behind Madeline starting her Extraordinary Routines project, because she was looking at all these other people who were super successful, and she was like, "Why? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing different?" And of course, social media offers a level of access and insight into other people's lives that I think we're just simply not meant to have. We're not meant to have that much information and kind of visual stimulus about other people's lives. So it's no wonder that we're constantly comparing our own lives, our own success, our own output to those of others, you know, people we don't even know. And even though we know it's a snapshot, quite often of a complete stranger's life that we don't have any knowledge or context for, these comparisons can make us feel frustrated, like a failure, unfulfilled, lazy. I know that I've certainly used those words to myself plenty of times. And in the book, Madeline writes that the comparison pulls us away from ourselves and our own joy. So to quote a bit from the book, she says, "We can easily miss what we really want when we keep getting lost in other people's lives. We berate ourselves for not doing the thing today, forgetting that it's actually someone else's thing that we want to do." So again, taking us back to creative thinking, she encourages us to kind of flip comparison, look at it from a different place. So instead of being scared or guilty about feelings of comparison and subsequent feelings of envy, which we are told are bad, what if we approach comparison with curiosity? What if comparison and feelings of envy are actually a signal to us about what it is we really want? So an example might be, you feel like you're comparing yourself to your professionally really successful friend who somehow also manages to get up and run 10K every morning. This book kind of encourages us to get curious about that envy and interrogate, what is it actually that we're craving when we think about that friend? Is it that we want more time outside? Is it that we want more time to ourselves, time to move our body, something like that? It's not that necessarily we actually want to lift their kind of daily routine and instantly put it on ours. And the same thing is strangers on the internet. You're seeing someone who seemingly has loads of friends, constantly attending parties and events, having a great time. If we interrogate that, is it actually that we want more connection? We want to not feel isolated. We want to feel seen, part of a community. Very rarely is it that we want exactly the thing that we're seeing and comparing. And Madeline Dorr suggests that we get curious about it and then think about how you can incorporate these more specific and personal things into our own daily rhythms. After all, we know there's no copy and paste, one size fits all solution to our happiness. Okay, and moving on to the final thing is be delightfully disciplined. So this one kind of I found a little bit difficult, I'm not gonna lie, but it is really interesting. Sometimes in life you have to do the thing. You have to do the thing. You know, we all have responsibilities and sometimes things have to get done. And often the best way to get these important things done, we're told, is to be a disciplined person, you know, the most optimized, productive person in the room. But in the book, Madeline writes about how the word discipline carries so many negative connotations. It's actually about punishment, rigidity. It might even be about conformity for you. It's about productivity. All that contained in this one word that we are told is such an important thing to be. So we develop a bit of a fear around this idea of discipline and doing the thing and believing that we'll be punished, usually by ourselves, you know, if we don't meet those rigid expectations. So then it's safer not to do anything at all, which we also berate ourselves about. So we're kind of frozen in this cycle of fear and inaction, and even when it comes to things that we have to do or even want to do. But like I say, sometimes we do have to do the things. So what if discipline wasn't something you either are or you're not? What if discipline was a skill that could be learned? And as we've discussed already, learning, all that kind of good stuff, it's all about growth, it's about flow, flexibility, about making mistakes, curiosity, creativity, all that good stuff. That's everything that we're taught that discipline isn't about, but actually, what if it could be? And taking this even further, what if we change the things that we want to cultivate a discipline around? So instead of discipline and being disciplined only being about work and output and productivity and making money, Madeline Dorr asks us to kind of consider some other suggestions about what we can be disciplined about. So what if we were disciplined about being kind? What if we were disciplined about the things that nourish us? What if we were disciplined about how we talk to ourselves? Reserving judgment, saying, I don't know, doing things differently. How much happier would we be if these were the things that we focused our attention and our energy on, rather than just terrifying ourselves into constantly producing and improving and optimizing just for the sake of it? So that's the final thing. And just to kind of recap the 5 things from this book, it's about treating our days like they are fecund and not finished and cyclical, and there's room for it all. Treating every day like an experiment, having a creative outlook on things, scrapping the routine, more listening to the rhythms and things that actually suit our lives, being curious rather than simply comparing yourselves to other people, and then that last one, delightfully disciplined. I'm thinking about actually what are the things that we want to cultivate and get good at in our life. And just before I finish, I want to kind of leave you with a really nice quote that Madeline often signs off her podcast episodes with. So, there's more to our days than what we did or didn't do. So we may as well find a way to enjoy it. And that's me. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Rebecca. Thank you so much, and such a nice quote to leave us on for the rest of the day as well. So I think that it's just past 9, and unfortunately we won't have any time for questions. But a final round of applause for our 3 speakers. I really enjoyed today, and yeah, where else can you get talks about workshops, Neanderthals, and productivity, other than 5 things. And I'll leave you to the question. I wonder if Neanderthals had productivity guilt and whether they workshopped the solutions. A question for another day. Well, thanks again, folks. And yeah, we'll hopefully do this again next month. But yeah, have a great day. Don't be too guilty. Don't feel too guilty about not getting too much done. Is that the key? Anyway, thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.